Hello and welcome to the tutorial on how to draw a castle. Okay, so now we are going to work on the color of this thing. The first thing you should know about color is that when you're filling colors, everything has to be connected. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If I use my magic wand to select the inside of this object that we're going to fill the color for, you'll see that these parts of the bricks right here don't get selected because they're separate. So one thing you have to make sure that you do right before you do your color is to create a channel opening so that the selection can flow through into these areas. Okay, it's just like water. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here, I'm going to deselect everything, Control D. I'm going to take my eraser, I'm going to make a tiny little hole. So I'm going to make it about a 2. I'm going to put a hole right there. I'm going to come to the next one, which is right here. I put my hole right there. I'm going to come to the next one, put a hole right there. And my last one, I'm going to put a hole right there. So you can see what I just did is I created a connected set of spaces so that when I go to select this, everything is now colorizable. So next, we're going to add a new layer. So I've got, if you see what's happening here, I've got a shape selected, but without any border technically. So if I get rid of the tower we just drew, I still have this shape selected. If I need to come back and reselect this shape for any reason, I can always go back to layer 2. Okay, so to keep track of this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the name of layer 2 to Tower Outline. Right? So let's say I do something, I draw something, and I lose this outline because I select something else. I can always come back to this tower outline and grab this shape again. So it's important to keep this level separate. It's one of the important aspects of layers. Okay, but nonetheless, we're going to be working on layer 3. So we'll name layer 3 Tower Color. Okay, so what do we color our tower? Well, it's made out of stone, so I think we can use probably gray. All right, so we'll use all these grays right here. The first thing I'll do is I'll take my fill tool and I'm going to fill it with a standard gray color. Okay. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to take my paintbrush. I'm going to increase the size up to about 45 is probably a little too much. About 25. Yeah, that's about right. Now what I'll do is I'll take all different types of grays and I'm going to make all kinds of little sort of different colors of stone. Bear in mind, the lower you are on this tower, the bigger the blobs need to be because the more visible the bricks become. The higher up on the tower, the further away it is from your eye. It's called foreshortening. What's going to happen is these colors need to be tinier, okay, versus down here where you see these bigger bricks, okay. Okay, that looks pretty good. Keep in mind that when you're doing this, you want to make sure that your blocks look kind of random. Now I can keep it like this, but I probably want to do a little bit of blurring. So I'm going to go to Effects, and I'm going to go to Gaussian Blur, just to soften this a little bit. Okay. There. Just a tiny little bit so it kind of covers up some of those strokes. There you go. Now I'm going to duplicate this color layer and duplicate it again. So duplicate it twice and then I'm going to merge it down twice. So now tower color is completed. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new layer and I'm going to take my black and I'm going to take the opacity and drop it down low. Then I'm going to take about a 10 or even more than that, probably a 30, and I am going to draw a shade on the sides, like this. Now, a wavy line is always going to look better just because you're talking about stone. The next thing you do is you take this paintbrush and you drop it down to about 10. Look at all these patterns and blobs of color, and you're going to want to outline them with the shade. See how that works? And you're going to randomly add bits and pieces of shade to these stones. This is how you make stone really look sort of three-dimensional. Okay, now I'm going to go to my Gaussian blur. So now I've got what looks like a pretty good tower. So what I'm going to do next is just take my layer 4 and merge it down into the tower color and merge it down into the tower. Now I'm going to rename this layer Tower. Now I've got the basic building block for my castle. So next I'm going to take this, I'm going to take my selection tool, and I'm going to select my tower, and I'm going to go Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste. And now I've got a duplicate of my tower. So I'm going to move that over here, and I'll zoom out to make it so I can stage this a little better. Okay. Just like that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a layer. Layer 3 is now going to be tucked underneath layer 2, or the tower layer. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to take my selection tool and I'm going to select a box that connects these two. Notice that I left a little bit of space here and here. Right? So if this were a fence connecting these two, there'd be about a foot of space underneath. I've also not gone all the way up to the top on this side. Now what I'll do is I'll take my fill and I'll select a gray, which is that same middle gray again. Now I'm going to repeat that process of making gray blobs everywhere. In this case, I'm going to use a paintbrush size of about 40. So that looks pretty good. So now I'm going to do a Gaussian blur. Looks about right. Then I'm going to reinforce the color by duplicating it twice, merging it down twice. Then I'm going to add a layer. Take my black, bring my opacity down, bring my brush size up to about 40. And I'm going to look to where the shade would be. So the light is coming from the front, so this tower is casting a shadow right here. And I can make it pretty dark right there. Alright, I can really darken that up. This tower is casting a slight shadow here. Okay. Then I'm going to take my brush size and bring it back down to 10. And I'm going to start outlining some of these stones. Okay, that looks good. Now I am going to blur this very gently. Maybe an 8. Okay. So now I've got my wall. Here's a trick. Because this is a forward-facing object, we don't need the three-dimensionality like we needed with these turrets. So we're going to bring this layer down into itself. Or rather, we're going to bring layer 4 down into layer 3. That's the wall layer. The next thing we'll do is we'll select our triangle, or our rectangle tool, and we'll select just like this. Take little bites out of it. Okay, so now I've got a pretty good looking castle.